coordinate movement for recovery. I feel the UK has done an amazing job of kind of reading the culture post-COVID and being in touch with real issues that people are working through and walking through on the ground. So Mark is very much involved collaborating with civic leaders, predominantly mayors in multiple cities across the UK on issues of mental health and food security, and also improving school situations. So Mark, we warmly welcome you. We're going to give Mark the floor for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to go into breakouts and talk about what he's sharing with us, and then come back for some open Q&A. So Mark, take it away.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Tom. Yeah, I've been an Anglican minister in the UK for 15 years, had a career in business before that, and now working for Gather Movement in this really exciting season, seeing churches be more strategic and more united in playing their part in their places. Gather Movement has got this vision about believing in transformation for our places, spiritually, culturally, socially. And yeah, we're seeing a real sense of the Holy Spirit leading Christian leaders around the country in a work of unity as they pray and act for transformation of their places. And we're also seeing some real huge opportunities working with local government and national governments, really post-pandemic and with the cost of living crisis. And yeah, we believe this is an opportunity that God is in, and I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. But it'd be great just to share a few highlights from the UK. I think the UK is one of only a few countries that has a national organisation that is really committed to seeing churches unite around city transformation. And we have over 150 towns and cities that have unity movements, church leaders who meet together regularly, pray for their places, and seek to act for their places as well. And so Gather is really joining in with what God is doing across the country and trying to be a support and trying to share best practice, trying to share stories around what's happening. And we do a number of things. We have summits every year. So this year we have 2 summits, one in the north of England and one in the south of England, as we try and reach new networks of leaders and get new people to come. And we also have, as you're doing here, a kind of online learning community where we can share stories, share thinking, pray for each other. And we do that every month. And we, in particular, look at 6 foundations that we believe are key for unity movements, churches working together across a city to embrace. And if I can remember those correctly, one of those is prayer. Learning how to pray together and for our places. One of them is strategy, thinking about actually how can we use our resources in a more strategic way across a city. One of those is collaboration, thinking about how we actually reach out beyond the walls of our church to collaborate not only together as multiple churches, but how we collaborate with other organizations like local government, how we play our part with health services in the community, how we play our part with other third sector organizations. So that's collaboration. Then we also think about building mission in the spheres. So we have marketplace, Christians in the marketplace. We have Christians working in spheres of influence in our society. And how can the church in a city help build mission more effectively into those areas? And so we are supporting that thinking and sharing ideas and praying together into that. I haven't got the 6 in front of me, so now I'm running short on what they are. But we have these 6 foundations that we have a little audit for, and I can perhaps send that to you, that allows church leaders just to think through a series of questions and score how they're doing in each of these 6 foundations, and whether there are areas perhaps to invest in this particular season to strengthen churches' ability to work together and impact in their communities. And we're seeing churches, as I said, thinking about spiritual transformation as much as social transformation. So we're seeing some areas really focus on evangelism and prayer, and we're seeing other areas really focus on social action around food, around mental health, and around families and supporting children. Yeah, so it's an exciting time. Let me give you a few examples from different cities around the country. In Southampton, in the south of England, there was a fantastic engagement that drew together the church unity movement, which is called Love Southampton, along with the universities in that city and the local government. And they came together for a summit to focus on the cost of living crisis that we have in this country, and to present what each of us knew about the situation in our communities, and then to spend the afternoon workshopping together. What was great about that is you had people from different sectors, if you like, from the faith sector, from the local government sector, from the academic university side, all bringing their thinking together and thinking about what have we got in our hands that we can make a difference right now in our communities as people struggle to heat and eat in their homes. And it was really productive, and that was kicked off a series of meetings, of engagements between those three sectors, if you like. And so that collaborative working is releasing more, I think, impact certainly in our communities. In Cambridgeshire, Cambridge is quite an important city in the UK because it's one of our top universities, and we see many of our future leaders coming through that city. And so what the church does is really important in terms of legacy and the impact for our country. And actually, we had a bit of a problem there, that actually church leaders hadn't really been meeting together regularly. In fact, they've really, if you were to describe how their relationships were, you would probably say they were in competition with one another rather than collaboration. But the civic leader there, the mayor, said that he was keen to work with the churches. And as a result of that invitation and him coming along, 55 senior church leaders from that city got together and then agreed to start meeting every month. Not every month, sorry, every term. So that's at least 3 times a year, to be that gateway to speak to their civic leaders and any other organizations that needed to speak to the church as a whole. And so we're really encouraged that, that is a new development in one of the key cities in our country. In Lincoln, a smaller city, but a very historic city in our country, they've had fantastic developments with the health service. We have a national health system service here in this country, as I'm sure you know. And it's divided into 42 regions, and Lincoln is working with the NHS leaders in their area, and through sitting in on meetings where they were discussing some of the challenges for providing healthcare in that city, one of the church leaders was inspired to say, well, I think the church could do this. They were actually talking about people who are suicidal. So as you probably have in the US and Canada, the biggest cause of death for people, for men under 50 and for all people under 40 is suicide. And it's a particularly big problem in the city of Lincoln for some reason. And ambulance drivers were taking people who are suicidal to the hospital, and they were finding it wasn't a great environment for them to be in, to help them in the emergency department. And it was also creating, quite lengthy delays in the emergency department queues. And so over the last couple of years, the ambulances have now been bringing people who are suicidal to 10 churches in the city of Lincoln that are open from 4 in the evening till 11:30 at night. And the volunteers in the church have been trained to take care of people as they come in. And they found that actually the patients that come into the church are helped in a much more effective way through the crisis support nightlight centres that the church is running. And actually, it's also massively benefited the emergency department in terms of queues and some of the lengthy time that's involved with helping people who are feeling suicidal. And so the healthcare system, the NHS, is now paying these churches to continue to deliver this service and is expanding it over a much wider area, and to the tune of around about £500,000 a year, which is a really significant collaboration between local churches working together and the healthcare system. In Sheffield, a great historic industrial town in our country, they've been really inspired by Mac Pear's New York Disruptive book, and have actually started to think about how they want their city to look over the next 10 years. And that's birthed a lot of prayer, and in fact, a very exciting prayer initiative called Arise Sheffield. And they've got this app that allows anybody to write down or to identify the street that they've prayed along. And by making this app available to the churches across Sheffield, they've been able to cover every single street in the city with prayer. And it also shows how often that street is covered in prayer. And just a great communication tool to encourage people to pray for their city and to pray for every individual street and household. In Basingstoke, just outside of London, they counted, the Unity Group counted that the churches across Basingstoke were running 152 social action groups and services, which is absolutely phenomenal, but they'd never counted them before. And they have begun to coordinate these 152 social action groups under one banner so that they can partly network amongst themselves and share best practice and ideas, but also present that more effectively to their local government. And they've also, under that banner, began to coordinate some training. So Gather Movement were down there just a couple of weeks ago, doing a faith sharing training session. How do we share our faith with the social action projects that we're doing? So yeah, lots of things that are going on. It's just a bit of a snapshot. And I think Tom was particularly interested to get an update on what we call the M10 Mayors Project in England, which I can just share a few updates on. We have an interesting situation in this country. I guess like many Western economies, we're struggling to pay for the services that we need for our communities. And in this country, and I imagine it will be similar to yours, we have 4 tiers of government and of thinking about our population. So we have a national level, a national government. Then we have a county-wide level, which is typically 2 to 3 million people. And then we have city and town-wide, which is maybe a couple of 100,000 people. And then we have what we call hyperlocal, which is the neighborhood. And typically you'll find a church, a school, and a medical center at that hyperlocal level. And those are what we often call anchor institutions. They're organizations that actually tend to stay in that hyperlocal area for the long term and build, because of that, trusted relationships with the community. And we're thinking about how we collaborate better at each of those 4 levels. We were encouraged during the pandemic that the 15 major UK denominations actually got together during the pandemic and said, what can we do together as the church in this country? And they formed the Church Works Commission and use their sort of national heads to agree some social action work and projects nationally, and can also engage at a national government level together in quite an effective way. And it's been encouraging because I think it's probably the first time that the national government, has had an opportunity to speak to the whole church at round one table, which is something that's really welcome. We're seeing something similar happening at the next level down, the county-wide level. We've had a political process called devolution happening in the UK, where essentially people feel that they are being left behind in different parts of the country. And there's been a political response to want to have more powerful political leadership and finances that the local leadership can determine how they're spent. And this has led to initiatives like the Levelling Up initiative, which is recognizing there's a big difference between the standard of living for people in the south of England and versus people in the north. But it's also true to say that in every city there is disparities and inequalities, and that levelling up is something that's more than just a north and south issue, but it's actually something that's within every city. But this has led to elections for new government leaders at a county level, and we have 10 of them in the UK that govern about half the English population. And so the Mayor of London is a guy called Sadiq Khan, and the Mayor of Manchester, where I'm based, is a guy called Andy Burnham. And they're very well-known political leaders that have taken on these roles to bring more devolved power to the regions of England. What's been interesting about that is that during the pandemic, certainly in Manchester, we developed a really strong relationship with the mayor and said, as the church, we would really like to collaborate with you to serve our communities during these difficult times. And he was so inspired by what the church was offering in terms of collaboration that he introduced us to the other 9 metro mayors around England and said, you really need to listen to this vision. It's great. And all the mayors, the 10 mayors, said, yes, we would love to work with the church. And because this is a fairly new level of government, this was a fairly new opportunity to collaborate with government at this level. And I suppose what we're seeing is it's quite an effective level of government. They can really make things happen at a county level. And for example, healthcare is pretty much run at a county level. So if you can operate at that level, suddenly it opens up a number of new partners to work with in the community, which has been exciting. And that's what's been happening. So right now, we are working with 5 of those metro mayors. That's what we felt was manageable to start off with. And I've been working with the mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, which has obviously got Cambridge as its principal city in it. I suppose the other comment to make is that the national government has been running a project called The Future of Cities, recognizing that we need to think about making sure our cities are technologically ready for the future, as well as their infrastructure's ready, and that actually there is a plan for every city across our country. We've engaged with some of the leaders of this group, and it's been fascinating to hear that some new terms, new to us anyway, that they realized at a national level they were what they call space blind. Space blind means that actually they just judge every town and city by its population, by the number, They don't really differentiate in any other way. And of course, when you know a city and live in a city, you'll know that there are many things that distinguish a city and make it unique. Its culture, its history, its stories, all make it unique. And, in some areas, for example, Manchester, it's called Manchester, but it's made up of a number of cities, actually. And the two closest are Manchester and Salford. They're literally rubbed shoulder to shoulder. And there can be some real cultural challenges of getting the two cities to work together in this greater Manchester area. And that's often the case in many places. And so this new term of space leadership has evolved, which is rather than seeing every city as a kind of cookie cutter version of the next based on population size, we actually need to have a much more nuanced a way of describing our cities, of mapping our cities, that understand the culture, the history, and the makeup of our cities. And that's led us into some really fascinating conversations. And I suppose what we're excited about is that churches working together can really make a massive contribution to this space leadership. And we're again seeing that our county government leaders are really very interested to speak to the church about what they're seeing, the intelligence they can bring from the communities, because they've been there in some cases for 1,000 years. So they carry that story very knowledgeably, and they know what's going on in people's lives today. So, yeah, again, really exciting to start to get around the table with our local government leaders, as I say, these metro mayors, as they're called, and to come in a posture of service and say, how can we serve the city, and to listen to them and then to explore how we collaborate. And I suppose what's interesting is that we found that there are three common areas that our civic leaders want us to collaborate on. And they are food security, they are mental health, and they are school readiness. The third one, school readiness, I don't know whether that's a phrase familiar to you, but it's this idea that in the first 1,000 days, they're the most critical, from conception through to being 2.5 or something. They're the most critical days for a child as to whether they will be able to engage with school when they are of school age. And then the couple of years after those 1,000 days are the next most important in terms of the child being physically, mentally, socially ready to engage with school and to succeed in terms of the opportunities the school provides for you. And there's a lot of data and evidence that suggests, where children are not school ready, and they measure it by about 12 different factors, then the social problems that child will experience through the rest of their life are statistically much, much higher. So government sees this as an area of real strategic need. And it's interesting that 50% of all children in the UK do at some point go to a church-run early years group, whether it be a mother and toddler group or whether it be some other church provided service. So, yeah, actually the church has a real huge reach into family life, particularly for young children, and the potential to do a great deal to help this issue. So yeah, these are the three areas that I guess we're beginning to work with local government and with the health services regionally as well as nationally, and we are learning to do things like mapping, which we've not really done in the past. You guys might well be aware of this, but it's just creating a database on an Excel sheet of the churches in your city can be quite a challenge sometimes when you want to map everyone, all the denominations. Getting that data together. It's not that difficult to search churches on Google, but it's surprising how few, cities actually have that information. But we've then created 3 different surveys to do with churches across the city. And as I say, they're on food, mental health, and school readiness. And by collecting that data, we can then put that into Google My Maps and create a fantastic image of churches that are labeled red, amber, and green. So the green is this church is doing this stuff, whether it be food, mental health, school readiness. Amber is they've got potential, but they're not doing it right now. And red is they're just not in a position to do it right now. I've just come off a call with Lancashire County Council, one of the councils in the north of England, who were just delighted that we could provide this data for the region. And we're saying that, it helps them to tie it in with some of the mapping work that they've done. It helps them to see where the gaps are in provision. And they were saying, yeah, that's great. If there's a red church there, but it's in an area of a gap in terms of provision, we can provide money to try and resource that or use their building or whatever it is. So they were really excited about some of the mapping work that we're doing. And again, we're finding local government and the health systems are quite happy to write checks for money if we can provide this mapping data describing what the church is currently doing in these three key areas. So we're very happy to provide those templates if that's any help for your cities. But that's something that's been important in our journey. I think also we found that civic leaders and healthcare leaders have recognized that the church offers something very unique. They might not understand our faith very well although there are plenty of examples of chaplaincy in the healthcare world where spiritual care is understood and appreciated. But the world of church obviously uses some quite different language to the civic authorities. So there are some challenges there about learning to listen to each other and understanding the different language that we use. But I think as I said, the civic and the healthcare sectors have begun to really appreciate that in our communities, we provide time for relationship with people. Our healthcare and our local government's very much about delivering services that are quite transactional with people and can be very important, like dispensing medicine or benefits or whatever. But actually, they've recognized that actually people need a more holistic wraparound support. And if you've got people who can offer time and a listening ear, and then the ability to journey with people in terms of signposting them to some of the services that are available, that is so important if we're going to actually see lasting impact in people's lives in our community who are in need. And so that respect, I think, is opening up more opportunity for collaboration. And we're beginning to see, the church being able to have a much wider impact across our communities. So I think probably that's all I need to say. I did send through a document on mental health, because I think when we think about mental health, we understand the need for it. It's one of the most pressing needs. There's a huge amount of anxiety. There's a huge amount of people in crisis. And Matt, maybe you could just share the slide that we talked about. We are trying to put this document, it's about 20 pages or so, into church leaders' hands that just shows, if you like, there's a spectrum of support that the church is already offering and needs to continue to offer and maybe do more of, but also needs to be able to present this in a map that says, actually, across our city, we're 100 churches, and this is where these different things are happening. So we can start to get signposting from our local government or health services directly into some of the things the churches are doing. So here's an example of some of the things that churches can do to be more mental health friendly and actually deliver a strategy across the city. So on the left-hand side, you can see we work with a charity called Kintsugi Hope, and I recommend you look at their website in the UK. They do some great stuff, and I'm sure there may well be organizations, Christian organizations in your country that do similar stuff, but they provide a training session for churches which helps them to become more mental health friendly. And this is about reducing the stigma of mental health, giving some biblical teaching around mental health, and actually creating churches that are a more mental health friendly space, a more of a gentle presence, so that actually we feel more confident to talk to people about their mental health, and we're better able to listen to people because allowing people to talk is so crucial in this area of mental health. So just equipping the whole church and the whole network of churches, really every church needs to kind of get this training and become a mental health friendly church is a great starting point. But we also know that actually getting active is incredibly important. It's been said by our chief medical officer, if there was a tablet that had the same benefits of physical activity, it would be considered a miracle drug. So yeah, physical activity has enormous benefits to our mental health. And in our city, many churches run walking groups or running groups or dance groups or other physical activities. And actually, we need to do a better job of just creating a calendar in our city of where the churches are that do these physical activities, so we can encourage people to go and enjoy the physical activity that they like doing. And yeah, so physical activity. Social prescribing is this idea of GPs, when they see their patients, general practitioners, doctors, that actually 20% of their patients don't need a medicine or a tablet, but they need a social activity to be part of, where they can feel belonging. And actually leveraging the church and engaging this church in this area is a real opportunity. The orange one is about more specific well-being and mental health groups, 12 sessions that really help people who feel overwhelmed by their mental health to go and engage with their mental health and get some peer support to help them manage and improve their mental health. And finally, crisis support. I mentioned earlier the issues we have of people who are suicidal is the nightlight crisis centres, but also some suicide prevention that church members can do, which we know from NHS studies can really reduce suicide by up to 80%. So there's just a range of things that the church is doing right now. And actually, it's just about trying to map this and be able to present what an overall strategy for a city looks like in terms of impacting and supporting mental health. So, Tom, I'll leave it there. Yeah, over to you.
Mark, this is fantastic. I'm just, sitting here, I'm hearing fresh terminology, some fresh language. We're so used to talking to ourselves here in the States and in Canada. So we just appreciate your courage tackling these kinds of things. We want to go into breakouts for 10 minutes. This is our pattern here. And I want folks to talk about this. What are you hearing that's fresh and encouraging? Hey, welcome back, Tribe. I hope you've had a good dialogue. Mark, again, deepest thanks to you for what you brought. Let's move right into it. We got 10 minutes. Any of you discuss something? What did you find most refreshing or encouraging, just off the top of your heart? Anyone's free to share. Unmute. Let's just go for it. Have a conversation.
I'll just start. Mark, I just so appreciate what you were sharing with what's going on in the UK, and it encourages me because we're in a really tiny city. Kingsbury is only 12,000 people, but it feels to me like God's just really coming on us to say, how do you really come together? And so we've got people from various parts of our city are already coming together. But it's learning how do we really even unite more as true brothers and sisters in the Lord, and how do we look at different parts of our city and bring them together. And so, Mark, it was just so encouraging to hear all these different things that are happening in your cities of people coming together and different aspects of the cities coming together. So thank you so much. It gave me huge excitement about our future.
Fantastic. Someone else, what did you find refreshing?
There were like 8 things, Mark. I was sitting here on mute, and I was just you said this one thing, and I was just like, oh man. So yeah, really encouraging. I had just a quick question that you didn't talk about, but I thought you probably would have an answer for. So the people that are giving, you're talking about how the churches are serving in terms of mental health and providing resources, counseling, whatever that would look like for people in their cities, right? I'm curious what sort of internal structure there is to look after like the leaders and their mental health, because I'm also seeing that trend amongst religious and church leaders, and I'm assuming you probably have something already in the balance there where, like, yes, we're serving, but we're taking care of the people who are serving as well. Is that training group you were talking about?
Matt, you just broke up on the question, so could you just quickly repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure why.
It was maybe my end, actually.
Okay. I was wondering if you had some sort of service for the people who are serving when it comes to the mental health care.
Yeah.
And what kind of structure that looks like, because I know you're serving your city, but do you guys have something set up to kind of take care of the leaders? Because we're noticing that's an issue, is the breakdown of our church and ministry leaders as well. And I didn't know if there was anything on those lines.
Okay, yeah. No, that's a great question. I mean, it depends which, service we're delivering, really. But the Kintsugi well-being groups have a really good protocol for, the leaders in terms of the support they get from a wider network to touch base with. And through sort of debriefing with an assistant leader after the session. So there's some really good practice principles that are built in the delivery of that course. It's a 12-week course. But yes, I mean, you raise a really good point about who cares for the carers and how do leaders renew and refresh themselves. And I guess, church family is such an important place for that, not only in our weekly gatherings and our discipleship groups, but also on the retreats that we do. Healthy patterns for self-care are so important as we care for others.
I have a question, Mark. What kind of feedback are you getting from some of these mayors, or observations from them? Are they giving you some real life feedback that, wow, this matters, this is encouraging, this is helping improve the lives of people on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think, mayors are responsible for strategy, and they are very grateful for, a network that not only can help develop a strategy, but can deliver it as well. We are, some would say, we're the only players on the field, and they're referring to the church overall, who can really do that. So they're seeing the church as really vital in terms of they call it shared missions in our community, caring for people in terms of mental health and food and so on. I think they also, again, this idea about, the church and the people of the church have opportunity to provide time in the way that no other part of society does. I think that is being more and more understood, more communicated from our mayors. But yeah, I think it also the amount of time they give us and the checks they write are two key things, aren't they? And we're seeing increasingly that, and they're opening the doors for more check writing in terms of the healthcare system. So yeah, we're really convinced that we're being seen as an extremely valuable alliance at the moment, and worth investing in.
Fantastic. Someone else, a question or observation?
Hey, Mark, I have a question for you.
Hi, Brick.
Hey, so, and I want to know if this is true in your country. It seems like a phenomenon in our country. In our breakout session, I don't know your exact words. When you talked about unity, you talked about three aspects: theological, relational, and service. I don't know the exact words used, but to that effect. So my church is doctrinally sound and does a lot of community outreach, but they're very fearful of theological disunity, so they will not partner with any other church in the community for the other services. And I'm just wondering if that's a phenomena. Excuse me, I'm right next to a road. That's a phenomena that I have found very common in the American church. Do you find that in Europe as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brick. And yeah, I mean, you might be aware if you read the news over here of the debates over sexuality and the threats to church splits and divisions. And yeah, it is on one hand, a very difficult time for the church in the UK, as well as Europe, particularly at the moment with what the Anglican Church has pronounced about same-sex marriage and blessings and so on. We are seeing in some places church leaders saying, this is all I'm talking about to my congregation. Now, maybe those are more conservative congregations, but some church leaders have been quite worn out by this issue in their churches. And some, are focused very much on it to the extent that they're not looking outwards to take hold of the opportunities of working together in our community. As we try and remind people, no matter what your issues are on sexuality, actually, we all agree that people shouldn't be trafficked as sex workers. Children at risk of abuse need safeguarding and protecting. There are some things that we can all unite around. And there has been some issues as well in the wider community of organizations not being happy to work with churches that maybe have conservative views around sexuality.
Yeah, right.
But actually, that's been where we've had real support from the Metro mayors who've said, we want to respect theological diversity. And actually, if you come back and say to me that there is any obstacle to your engaging and serving in the community because of your theological perspective, then let me know, because I will come and support you and argue for the fact that, we're all one city here, and whatever our theological perspectives, there is a need and a commitment of working together. So we've been encouraged by that, and actually feel some of this work that we're doing with our mayors is quite opportune in terms of the season and the times that we're in. And it's actually a counter narrative that says, no, let's not divide, but let's actually unite. And reminding ourselves of particularly John 17, about the great collaboration. We've got the Great Command and the Great Commission, but actually John 17 is the great collaboration, isn't it? And that we mustn't forget that.
Wow. Well, Mark, that's a fantastic note to end on. We're at the top of the hour. On behalf of this group, and actually many more who are going to watch this on a recording, right? We all say thank you. Thanks for who you are. Thanks for stepping up and stepping into this space. I know it's a joy walking alongside Roger across the UK. So we appreciate you. I've asked Nancy Mitchell, a dear friend and intercessor from Kansas City, to pray for you, pray over you as we close our gathering today. Nancy, let's just come in alignment and in agreement as Nancy prays for Mark and for this great work.
Thank you, Mark. Very encouraged. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Nancy.
Well, Father, I'm just so encouraged this morning, and I thank you for the story from across the ocean and for all that is happening there and the collaboration and the unity that's being built there. Lord, across different sectors and how the church is so uniquely equipped in helping with these difficulties that we are all facing, and that you knew this moment of time would happen, and that you have equipped your church and you have anointed your church, Lord, to step right into this arena and to see the opportunities that we have before us, Lord. And I thank you, Lord, for what you have given this group in Great Britain in bringing people together around, uniting around common purposes, Lord. And there's so much pain in our cities, in our villages, in our nations, God. And what we need is you and the love of Christ being demonstrated through your church. So, God, I thank you for this. I pray a blessing over Mark, Lord. I pray, Father, you would continue to lead him with your wisdom, with discernment, God, to be able to discern the seasons we're in and favor, Lord, in the cities and all of the sectors, Lord, to help be your instrument, Lord. And I ask that you would bring others alongside him, that you would bring people, leaders, Lord, who capture this vision and will walk alongside in the power of your Holy Spirit, Lord. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. Continue on. We'll continue to pray for you and uphold you. You're doing a great work.
Thanks, everybody. God bless you guys.
Okay, we'll see you next month. See you in the month of June, first Friday. Blessings to you.
Mark.